12 months of fresh veg. No polytunnel? No problem. It may surprise you to learn that until 10 years ago, all of our vegetables that we grew were grown in the outside plots. It wasn't until we moved here some 10 years ago, this property came with a greenhouse. And of course, now we have the polytunnel. But from reading the comments, I can see that many of you do not have undercover growing spaces. So in today's video, I thought we'd take a look at how you can get fresh vegetables all year round grown outside. I've had this polytunnel for the last couple of years, and in all honesty, I wouldn't want to be without it. It's true what people say. An undercover growing space, be it a polytunnel or a greenhouse, it will extend your growing season by around about 6 weeks at either side of the growing season. It means that you can start things off earlier undercover. It also means that you can have things grow for longer after the outdoor season gets really cold and wet. And that means that they don't need protecting. So when we grow things outside in the plots, we have to work a little bit harder to create the conditions that they will need so that you get a successful harvest. Also, we get gardeners of all levels and all experience that watch our channel. And it could be that you're at a time in your life or at a point in your life where you can't really justify the outlay of a polytunnel or a greenhouse. They are an investment and they will over time pay you back. But if you're not ready on your journey yet to be able to make that investment, don't let it stop you growing food all year round. Just grow it outdoors. When we first started growing our vegetables some 30 years ago, probably much like yourselves, I thought, I can't grow anything over winter. It's going to be too cold, too wet. There's not going to be enough light. But for the first 20 years of growing our own veg, every carrot, every cabbage was grown out in the open, under the sky. Even now, some of our best vegetables are grown outside and over the winter months. But of course, things change. And over the years, we get new products and new methods. I was hugely influenced by my own father. He had an allotment and grew his own vegetables. Back in his day, everything was dug. Unfortunately, he never got to know the wonders of no-dig gardening. Also, when myself and Mrs. W first started gardening, there wasn't really anything like insect mesh. Even fleece or row cover wasn't ever really talked about. These are big advances that have come on over the last 30 years. And of course, all of these things help us to be able to grow more of our own veg during the colder months of the year. So the first thing is where you're going to plant them. During the winter months, the sun is very low in the sky. It's not that warm. And of course, you tend to get frosts. Here in plot 2, this bed receives virtually no sunshine at all during the winter months. The sun starts here and it goes over the top of my head and then sets where the woodland is behind us. But of course, it's really low at that time of the year and it won't get high enough to hit this bed until it's almost at the other end of the garden. What does that mean for you as a gardener? Well, it's what we call a frost pocket. So if we get an overnight frost, this bed will take some time before it defrosts. Whereas on this side of the plot, it receives the sun all through the winter days. So when we do get that frost overnight, the sun shines the following day. On this side of the garden, it defrosts really quite quickly. So it's not really worth growing anything in this bed, and in particular right down the bottom here. We can get away with it here. And the vegetables you can see that are in here, these are our brassicas for the month of October. We just pulled the last 2 cabbages from September. But they're going to be ready before we get to the end of October. Because here in the UK, by the end of October, the clocks will have fallen back and there will be much less light levels. And of course, it will start to get colder. We will have had those harvests by then. It's not really worth growing in here, because if you grew something like a root vegetable and it freezes overnight and it's going to take all day before it virtually defrosts, how are you going to extract that root vegetable? If you're growing something like lettuce here, lettuce, when they freeze and then they're just left there without defrosting properly, you'll find the leaves will all go brown and you'll get mildew problems. It doesn't mean to say you can't grow anything. If you remember a couple of videos back, we sowed our green mustard. That's all germinated fine. So you don't need to leave the soil bare. It's just not a good idea to be growing vegetables here. By growing the green manure, of course, you're growing something that's really going to help your soil. The next thing you need to consider, like most things to do with gardening, be it vegetables or be it with flowers, you need to have the right plan in place. You need the right varieties and the timing needs to be right. Getting the right plan in place will ensure that you'll be able to grow food in your beds all year round. But you do have to formulate that plan. You have to know exactly when to sow. And on this channel, we, at the end of every month, we make a video on what you could be sowing the following month. So you get a heads up, you'll know what to be sowing. So if you're not too sure when to sow something so that you get the harvest you want, the best way to find out that information is to ensure that you're subscribed to our channel and have your notifications turned on. And then you'll be informed every time we upload a video. But why is it important? Well, there was broad beans in here at first, in the first part of the year. We had an amazing harvest off those, and they finished their harvest toward the end of May, beginning of June. These sprouts were sown at the end of May. By the end of June, we took all of the broad beans out, and in went these sprouts. One thing you'll find with a lot of winter vegetables is that they take a long time to grow. They're not a 5-minute job. They were transplanted here in June, and they won't be ready to eat until November. The reason why we want to get our timings right and get them into the ground is that they need to do the majority of their growing before winter comes. These already have small little buttons starting to form, but they won't be ready until November. But they're in a good position. Even if the weather, even now, turns really bad on us, we're still going to get a harvest of our Brussels sprouts. Whereas if you transplanted them in July or August, they simply wouldn't have got to this stage where they have small buttons. For example, these carrots you see here, they were sown here round about midsummer, the summer solstice. That gives them enough time to get to a decent size before the weather does turn inclement, and then the slow growth that they'll experience then, they'll just get ever so slowly bigger until you're ready to harvest them. This is one of the Chantenay red cord, and you can see they're at a lovely size. And now all they'll do is grow much more slowly now and put on their size just that bit more slower. But if you only sowed them 4 weeks ago, they wouldn't be at this size. These carrots in this bed, they're ready to eat any time from now. One of the reasons I've actually got them in the raised bed is that carrots, their biggest enemy is the carrot root fly. Carrot root fly can't really get beyond 18 inches to 2 feet when they fly. So when they're grown in the open ground, you generally need to cover them. So I've found for me that the best way is to grow them in raised beds. And I've purposely made these beds taller so that the carrot root fly doesn't get to them. And you can see, it works. There's no sign of carrot root fly there whatsoever. Raised beds, they are an investment. These weren't too bad. These pallet collars, I think they cost us about £7 each, didn't they?
Mm-hmm, yep.
So stacked 3 tall, they cost £21. But to some people, even £21 is quite a bit of money. So one of the things you can do is to do what we did earlier in the year, which is to grow them in containers. They work just as well growing in containers. And then there are other vegetables. These are pak choy. They don't need sowing quite so much in advance. For starters, they don't like the hot weather. So if you're growing them in the summer, you'll find that they'll mostly bolt on you. But they do like the conditions now. And these were sown in our August sowing video, weren't they?
Yes. Yeah.
You can see they're a nice size to go in the garden. So these are about 4 weeks old. And that's another trick to use when you are wanting to grow things over winter. Get them sown actually before you need them. As I say, these were sown 4 weeks ago, and this is the stage they're at now. Pak choy, typically 50 to 55 days, they're ready to begin a harvest. So we actually only need another 4 weeks of growing, and these will actually be ready to start giving us harvests. 4 weeks' time, we won't have got to the end of October. We'll be enjoying these lovely pak choy with our stir fries. It's the same with these spinach. They're multi-sown, so there could be 2 or 3 plants in there, depending on how many germinate. But spinach is one of those plants that benefit from being out in the winter, because when the weather does get cold, and particularly when it freezes, it actually sweetens up the leaves even more. And by multi-sowing them in any one given clump, you get more leaves instead of having individual plants. One thing you do have to do if you're going to be growing outside in your plots is to be able to create the conditions that these plants are going to need to be able to grow. The fennel, they'll be fine. They can stay there just like that. Even the spinach. But the pak choy most definitely would need to be covered. We have woodland behind us, and pigeons in particular love young brassicas. They would just devour them and we'd have nothing left. So we shall be covering those in the same way that we have with these. Of course, with those plants, the hoop doesn't need to be as high. But these are purple sprouting broccoli in here, and they will be up here by the time we begin harvesting them at the turn of the year in January. The netting for now, because there are still cabbage whites about at the time that you're planting anything in September. It's actually quite a warm day today, one of those lovely September days. And the cabbage whites will still be on the wing. So that's one reason to cover them here and now. But as we move into the most coldest months, they will stop any pigeons getting at your brassicas. And then when we do get into the very depths of winter and it gets really cold, if you have vegetables that are slightly more susceptible to the cold, what you can then do is then drop some fleece over your hoops, and that'll create like a little microclimate, keeping them nice and snug and a bit warmer than they would as if they were out in the open. For things like purple sprouting broccoli, you don't have to worry. They are cold hardy, or at least they are here in the UK. You know, they'll easily survive temperatures down to -8 or more. But if we did get a really bad one, even these, I would put a bit of fleece over. You can always remove the fleece during the day once the sun comes out, because the fleece will hold the heat in. Another bit of maintenance that you'll need to be doing to your plants, and in particular these, as they get taller, you want to put a stake in there and tie your plant loosely to the stake. Not right tight so you eat into the flesh, but enough so that it can't move too much. Otherwise you get what we call windrock. Windrock is not good for your plants. It won't be terminal. But what it does do, it breaks the tiny little roots that look like hairs on these plants. Those roots are responsible for a large part of the nutrient and water take-up. So if they're broken and they can't take up all the water and nutrients that they actually need, for you, the gardener, it means that you will get a smaller harvest. On your sprouts, the buttons won't be so big. With your cabbages, their head won't be so big. So when you've got tall plants, remember to stake them. Some of you may be growing your vegetables in open patches. If you're doing that, it's a good idea to actually get some windbreaks in place. Now, we're lucky. We grow our vegetable patches here in our back garden, or at least one of the rooms in our back garden. You can see there's fencing behind me, and there's fencing on the other side. What that means is the winds tend to run this way for us. But as they blow, they hit the fence and go over the top and then back down. That helps just breaks the speed of the wind up. Now you can recreate this by planting things like raspberries or blackberries. If you run them down the side of your garden, they will just slow down the wind's speed before they get to your vegetables. So have a think about that too. Hopefully you've seen from this video that it's more than possible to grow your food outside in your open plots. You don't necessarily need one of these. I said earlier in the video that we have a whole playlist of what to sow in any given month. There's also another way that you can find out what to sow, and that is to sign up to our monthly newsletter. We should be launching that in October, so all of you people, and there are many of you that have signed up for it already, you'll be receiving that into your inbox at the beginning of October. If you haven't yet signed up for it, then why not do so now? Just click on the link below and we shall send you the newsletter each and every month, free of charge. It'll include things like what to sow for the month, some tips for the month, and we'll also include a tip or a recipe from Mrs. W herself, with all those lovely vegetables that you're growing in mind. But if you do want a heads up on what you could be sowing from month to month and get ahead with your planning, then why not make yourself a cup of tea and watch this video next.